Well, after Lincoln's re-election, by the narrowest of margins, rolled some. Actually, I was a point off. I forgot to add the CP table total, so it was actually by 1 point. Rolled the CP table totals. The Confederates came up with kind of nice one, but they're mispositioned. They had been counting on using the West, and now Lee has moved to the East, and I don't really have forces in the West. Now, conceivably, I could build a fortress here at Vicksburg for whatever that's worth. Might help a little bit if I have enough points. 6 points I probably do. But the main threat is here in the East, and I don't have a lot of points there. The Union chose the East as their major, which works well because everything, they have like three armies now, or three forces that are operable in the East. But of course, Lee is going to stomp one of them. So their main thing is going to be try to get Jackson. They have basically no chance at this point, I think. Long turns, like the one that like a couple that happened back earlier in the year, could help them. We saw the effect of a long turn that helped them and one that hurt them. Now, this stays. It's pretty clear it would help the Union because the Confederates aren't going to gain any points, I don't think. Although it's hard to tell because Washington's damn near empty again because of Lyon's little expedition. For the Union, they got a weird roll of 12, which actually stripped them of their naval points down to 1. So they spent it in a hope of getting a good roll on the Confederate shipping. But, you know, if you don't spend those points early and wipe out the shipping early, it doesn't matter. And all they did was added 2 more ships sunk. They're up to 130, which means we're at 5 points for that. Again, I think the Union is just hosed here. But they will eventually win the war with Lincoln having won re-election. They won't win the game because they won't do as well as the Union historically did. As far as I'm concerned, I reached that moral victory, though, and I'm shocked about it, honestly. I didn't think a collapse in the East would be that devastating. All right. Kicking off, what is this? November, February 1864. We're moving into 1865 here. 4-point spread on the first roll of the turn, and that did stay. On the Confederates' advantage, they don't get any points. Lee moved up and stomped on, what is this? Rosecrans there. And he didn't destroy him, but he's got him demoralized, and this is pretty much what Lee can do, is he can wipe out these forces here and then begin gathering things up. The other points I burned. I had nothing I wanted to do with them. I didn't want to move Jackson. Not quite sure why, but I don't want to spend the points on Jackson. I feel like Jackson's more of a little trick for Sherman to chase more than anything else. And everywhere else, points were just useless. I could shift troops around. I can use them in the far west, but I don't want to do that quite yet. And then during the Union turn, Sherman goes and chases Jackson. Now Jackson's almost assured to get away. He has a cav leader here, so he'll escape on anything but a 1, and he's kind of fading away from the Union as they come forward. If it ends up a fight here in these mountain passes, Jackson's not that bad off. Now, he doesn't know this, but the Union kind of does. The Union is the one who knows that he only has 10 strength points there. Jackson thinks he's probably close to 20, and he's far off there. And then for the other force, Lyon came marching around, grabbed himself Mobile and Pensacola again. Now Florida has been liberated. Lyon's not going to be able to reconquer Florida. He's going to concentrate more down here, maybe in conjunction with Ord, on trying to maybe Alabama I could take, Georgia I could take. Tennessee's tough because of the fortress. There's a decent amount of force in those compared to what the forces on the field are like. All right, looks like it's time to get to work already. Another set of doubles came up, nines, big points all around. We're up to 15 CPs for the Confederates in the West, for example, and 14 for the Union in the East at this point. Again, when they get this high, chances are you don't have the turn with all those CPs getting spent. And of course, generating those CPs gives an advantage, I hope this was here, to the Confederates if it ends at all reasonably soon. A long turn is good overall for the Union, but not a short turn where that table gets moved forward a lot. And here we kind of need as much of a turn as possible for the Union to have a chance. Only 2 turns, this one, and 1 more left over here. A 2-point, then a 6-point roll. And I wonder what that A is. It's where the SD is. I don't know. The 2-point move sent Lyons here, and Lee went and stomped on Rosecrans. Then with the 6-point, Lee went around, wiped out whoever is there, Buell, his force. Actually hit Rosecrans before, so he was already disordered. Ran away with Jackson, burnt a couple of points. For the Union, I moved Ord and Pope. Now, what's big about moving Ord is that he swept down this way. He's still in the supply here, grabbing Decatur, which is difficult for Lyons to get. If Lyons gets Selma and Montgomery, he converts Alabama, which is double points, essentially. So that's kind of a sweet thing. And then it puts him ready to move into Georgia if need be, which he can convert much easier than Mississippi for him. But Jackson's running away and getting quite far from Sherman and heading down into this kind of dangerous area where he might be challenging Ord. Meanwhile, Lee, I can either face Sherman and see how well I can do there, or try to counteract whatever Lyon's doing. And some more big plays. Lyon manages to run his way up and take over the rest of Alabama. That converted. It's not a valuable state, only 4 points swing hands. Ord almost made it to Chattanooga. Now, he could have made it, but he couldn't have gotten the supplies. He's kind of got these 3 hexes. He doesn't have that one. I should probably put a little Confederate marker here just to indicate that. He's getting close to Jackson. There could be a fight there. Ord doesn't particularly want that, but he does want Chattanooga. Lee has moved up into North Carolina, and Sherman swept down to take it. Now, the point situation has gotten a lot richer for the Union. They're up to 97 points, and I have the Confederates at some ridiculous amount that they do not belong in because somebody got bumped, I think. Currently, I do not think the Confederates should have 1 point for Mill Springs. If I get a point, I can drift that down. I haven't taken that yet. That's what happened there. Still a lot of CPs available, although the Confederate ones are only in the West, and that leaves them with only 1 force, really, Jackson. Although they could dispatch some of the Mississippi garrison, but if they do that, it's not inconceivable that there could be a naval invasion. They don't know how many strength points are in Cairo. It's only 1, but they don't know that. There's a fleet sitting on top of them. And the Union does get a couple more next turn. So they certainly don't want to give up Memphis. They might be able to give up Vicksburg, but they don't want to get the last point out of there. And New Orleans is always vulnerable to an ocean attack. So there's kind of they don't really want to give those, they don't want to take the risk of that. Now, losing the Mississippi isn't terribly valuable anymore, so a loss of Memphis at 4 points or New Orleans at 4 points would be a big deal. Vicksburg at 1 would not again, and there's nothing they can get there, so maybe that strength point can get peeled off. Every strength point is really important at this point. There's not a lot I can do with it, though, so I'm being silly. You can see The Confederates are beginning to build depots. They're going to try to throw one in Camden, just in case they lose this line. You know, I mean, this is just defense in depth, but it's points they have to burn that they don't have anything to do with. Weird little dances are starting to take place, and among them, well, Lyons can't go any further. He's out of points. So Sherman starts trying to chase Lee, and Lee just is trying to evade Sherman. He can overrun this on retreat if need be. But otherwise, he just doesn't want to lose his army. He doesn't think he has the bigger army. Now, the truth is he doesn't, but it's not that much. Actually, yeah, it's not that much smaller. He's like 1 point less, but he doesn't know this. And Sherman is bullying him around, but it ends up being kind of a net nothing for the Union to chase Lee unless he catches him. Likewise, Jackson is streaming off. Instead of going here where he'd fight for Chattanooga, he's setting up towards Nashville, which is a bigger, more important place anyhow, and using his superior mobility to kind of avoid Ord's little army there, which could conceivably beat him, he thinks. The Confederates can't risk a fight, because as long as they can keep things about even, they think they can win. Right now, the Union has 100 points. The Confederates are at 29 plus the 4 or 5. If they can keep things about where they are, the Union will not win, barely. All right, well, we're almost tapped out at this point. There was a big roll, a 9-point swing. Sherman continued to chase Lee down. Now, Lee didn't get to Fayetteville. Some Union infantry is marching around in territory that's essentially neutral at this point, so no biggie for that. Jackson has slipped around Ord, cut off his supplies. He's just a little too far away to draw a supply from his rail net. That's a problem for him. It slows down his movement, and it poises Jackson so that he can launch an attack in supply up to Nashville. Exactly the kind of maneuver he wanted to take. Elsewhere, the Confederates spent 5 points on a fortress at Vicksburg. Not a lot of help to doing that. And they also stripped some strength out of Memphis to add to Jackson's army. They think they can afford it now. Union built up its depot in Missouri. Not a lot of action for them. They don't have any western points, so they can't do anything, and they're just watching Jackson run by. But the Confederates are down to a total of 3 command points in the west. The Union's at 4 in the east, and a pile of naval points, which I'm probably going to burn for no good reason, because I don't have enough forces in Washington to launch a navy. I might be able to do something out of Fort Monroe. Who knows? Ugh. More down here. I've got forces. It's just, it's hard to operate, basically. Lee is deciding to make his stand. The Union's out of points. He decided to stop at Columbia and not run away. He had the option to roll and try to. He chose not to. The main reason there, the points the Union was getting is beginning to look too high. Now, that was before I moved my Jackson stack up to Nashville, which is 4 more points. So right now we're at 97. I may have made a mistake. I've got 1 victory point for the Confederates. Where did they get a victory point? Yeah, I don't think they have one. Drain that away. They had one, but they lost it here. So 97 for the Union. The Confederates are at 28. Let's make that 31. 31 off 97 is 66. Plus, say, 5 more off. I need like 14 or 15 points for the Union. They might be able to get that if they can break Lee. I'm not sure. It's going to be tough. We're down to very, very few points, though. The reason Lee was able to do that was the Union is out of points in the East. The only thing they have, they have 1, but the only thing they really have left is their naval points, and they can use them for a transfer if nothing changes. Now, the turn could, of course, end, or it could generate more points. Down to the very last Union point, one naval point, and they get a respite. 3s on both sides. That's going to generate a bunch more points. Well, it's not really a respite for them to be able to do things. Blunt landed here in Florida. That was the main action. I moved up here in New Mexico, built myself a depot, but there's no real value to doing that. But now we got more points before this turn is over. It's not a huge amount anywhere. 4, 3, 2, 1, 3. A couple of points on each side, but the Union had to go first. They moved their boats over here, and Lion moved forward. Lee doubles back, counter marches onto the Lion, leaving Sherman holding the bag here. I thought I was going to build a fort at Columbia. Nah, I'm just going to go down and deal with this thing. And maybe this thing. There's more points down here. There's more things I can stop. Jackson swung down. Now these were hard calls. I had to use up 4 points here. 2 of them was easy. Eastern points to here. That gave me a decent amount of western points. But by putting Jackson here, I'm defending Chattanooga. I know what army that is. That's the Army of the Southwest. It's no more than a 6. I've got more troops than it. I think I can beat it. If I can have defensive terrain, I'm in great shape. It's out of supply. It's not going to be able to do much. So he's going to have to fall back. That puts him into range of Lee, and everything looks really nice for the Confederates as far as I can puzzle out as them. For the Union, well, I got the biggest of the armies, but it's not much bigger. Next blow, Lee hits Lyons. Now, both got disordered, but Lyons was able to get the second action, so he was able to recover from it. And he did that. A real hard choice, because Lee managed to withdraw some troops from Charleston into Savannah. Sherman could have gone forward, conquered all of South Carolina with that. You never know, because the turn could end at any time. Any doubles will end it at this point. And that is the end of the ride. We actually pulled all the way down through 4 of these, which will put the CP table total up to 32. Not quite 2 per. Close. Union attack on Brunswick with, of all people, McClernand. That was successful. So, you know, picking off the things, because it's going to take an action to take St. Augustine, and then it's going to take quite a ways to get to Tallahassee. I don't know if that's going to happen. Sherman's down here. He's captured South Carolina. He's ready to march into Savannah and then head across to try to trap Lee into that fight. But over here, Jackson and Ord's in a lot of trouble where he is. Elsewhere, I just couldn't get the points to get anywhere. It looks like I think the Union's got this one. 113 minus 32 puts me in the 80s. 81, I think. We got about a point on the far west. Drop it to 80. About 4 to 5 points on the Navy. We're right there. If it ended right now, I think the Union wins exactly. And chances are they are going to gain more points. We got things like Savannah sitting right here in the open. There's not much that can be done about that. For production, it looks like the Confederate imports are at 57, which is starting to cause some real problems. Supply line can only be 3 hexes. Yeah, that doesn't get us. We got to get below 50 for that to matter. And then it starts getting worse and worse.